Hello, hello, hello. It's Dr. Torie. OMG, you guys. I didn't know you guys missed me this much. It's been exactly 1 year since we recorded, and here I am. I am back. Now, the person that we have needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. It's LP, you guys. Everybody knows LP. He is an advocate for ACEs. I've done we had a 3-part series. Oh my God, when we did his podcast. He is an advocate. He does what he do, and I would love for him to share his story. LP.
All right.
Did you like that?
What's going on, Dr. Torie?
I gave you a good introduction, I think.
Yeah, I love that.
Because you really don't need an introduction. You're well aware of ACEs. It's humbling to me. And I'll be totally honest with you. I love your energy for addressing adverse childhood experiences. I was on your podcast. We did a 3-part series.
3-part series, yeah.
And it was great. I mean, I've been asked you in episode 4. And so, of course, for you, I'm going to do that. Your audience was amazing. The feedback that we received lets me know that there's a purpose for what we're doing. And so, for my return a year later, that wasn't me coming up with that. It's really what it is, God's grace and favor that we're here now doing this. It was 1 year ago.
Yeah. You know, when I thought about doing that series, I thought, who else better to have than my Missouri sister? You know, I love focusing on Black educated women, and you're a nationally known expert when it comes to ACEs. I had never even heard of ACEs before I talked with you, and I was just like, oh my God. So I'm doing all my research. That's why y'all got to watch these episodes, because I'm telling you, we went through her story in part 1, part 2. We did a whole breakdown of everything you want to know about ACEs, including a lot of graphics from the CDC's website, including the ACEs pyramid. And then the last part, we talked about the modalities, because, I'm a person that I don't like just doing discussions only, conversations. I always say, if you want me to be a part of something, it can't be a discussion or dialogue only, because that's just trauma dumping. I'd rather sit at home, binge watching paternity court and picking the lint out of my belly button and get involved in trauma conversation. We're from the show me state. You got to show me.
Let us know. So this is the reason why it had to be you. I don't need to introduce you. It's LP. Your energy for ACEs is so amazing. You're a testimony. We didn't know each other at all, but our comment got us here. But do you know one thing? You never really went into detail about your story because we were waiting for this opportunity. You lucky guy.
I'm ready.
So there's several questions.
Okay, let's go.
Are you ready for them?
Yes.
So, question number 1. What's your ACEs score?
My ACEs score is 4.
Interesting. Do you know what categories?
No, I don't remember right offhand, but I know that when we talked, you told me that it didn't matter if your score was a 1 or a 10. It doesn't make you, oh, if you got a 10, oh my God, that's just so horrible. Or if you got a 1, oh, you don't have anything to worry about. It just shows you where you are in that ACEs paradigm, and how do we go about helping you help yourself seek help, especially if you really need it. So it's just a testament to the people that came up with the quiz and their thought process. And I believe everybody should take the ACEs quiz, and more people that I talk to are taking the quiz. Plus, it's free.
It is. Well, what I would love to do is for you to tell your story. Now, just so you know, I asked about that ACEs score because I just redid it.
Oh, okay.
It is on my website. So we'll go into details about that. But nonetheless, all the stuff that we discussed about getting them back and talking about like community violence and things of that nature,
Yes.
CDC actually officially agreed with that. So if you check the CDC website, it's on there. And I know you're a researcher, so you're going to do that. You're going to be excited to see it. That means some changes is being done.
Good.
I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank
So
you.
I actually want you to, before we go into any additional questions, share your story. When you told me you found out about ACEs through me. What is it that you did when you first found out that you had ACEs?
I went back to my beginning. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, born and raised, show me state. And I grew up in poverty in a single parent household. My biological dad, peace be upon his eternal soul forevermore, brought 5 children into the world. I'm the second of 5. An older sister who was 4 years my senior. It's me. Then I have a younger brother and 2 younger sisters. They all have the same mom. My older sister has a different mom like I do. And I did not realize how much of an impact that his absence in my life had on me all the way up to now. I'm 52 years old. And I remember the last time I saw him, I was about 9 or 10 years old. And he ghosted me, after I went to see him.
Mhm.
And so I thought about, you know, as a kid growing up in St. Louis, I unfortunately dealt with a lot of ACEs because one of my main things that affected me as far as ACEs was bullying. At the age of 2, I contracted, it's called impetigo or flesh-eating bacteria, and it destroyed a lot of my nasal passages and left me with some facial scar. And so from the age of 2 to 16, I had a lot of reconstructive surgeries, and this is back in the early 70s. So I was born in 71, so this is 73. And, plastic surgery, as it's called, was not as advanced as it is now, and so they did the best they could, and I could always go back and get more reconstructive surgery. But I remember going through all of those surgical procedures and how, I had missed school, but I was able to catch up. I remember how I was being teased because, I wasn't the prettiest boy or the girls that you say, oh, he fire and all this stuff or whatever. I was so that guy that was like looking for what can I do to be accepted. So I would bend over backwards to be more accepted. I didn't want to be the center of attention because to me, the center of attention was, for me, I was being ridiculed. I was the butt of the jokes. I was getting picked on. So I became more of a shy person. I always thought I was introverted, and I really wasn't. That was my way of shielding myself from the ACEs that I was dealing with. As I got older, especially as a teenager, and my mom and my family always encouraged me to, hey, keep your head up. Don't hold your head down. Use your words, use your voice. I started doing things that built up my confidence. I started getting involved in sports. So I ran track and did wrestling in high school. I took up martial arts. I was doing Taekwondo at the age of 13. And
Mhm.
so that taught me a lot of self-discipline. It taught me a lot of self-confidence. It also taught me how to not be an aggressor. I just wanted to have because I grew up in a single parent household. It was just me. I didn't grow up around my siblings. So I didn't meet them until I was 30.
Right.
So how do I defend myself in some of these situations? Because I lived in the projects as a kid. And so I wasn't a gangbanger. I moved down there when I was 12. I wasn't into drugs and doing drugs and selling them and all that stuff or whatever. So how do I deal with these adverse childhood experiences like everybody else that's dealing with these adverse childhood experiences in the ghetto and, on the south side of St. Louis?
Oh,
And so I was a father at the age of 19, and my ex-wife, who was the mother of all of our children, we had 5 boys and 1 girl. We had started a family young, and we got married, we got divorced, we got remarried, we got divorced again. And so those trials and tribulations, they played a part in my aces, because even though we're saying adverse childhood experiences,
uh-huh.
you have aces as adults, because as a child, some of the things that I went through as a kid with not getting enough communication in terms of, I want to be able to, even though we were in a marriage, there was this disconnect.
Come on.
And because of her aces, there were things that I didn't realize that was affecting her the way it did.
I've
And
been,
as I got older,
I do not want to pause you at all,
oh,
but
go ahead.
let me tell you, you're good. I love the way that you're even saying, like, you make it. Oh my God, this is so good. You make saying the term ACEs a part of your discussion this whole entire time. So, the educator in me, I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to stop. Oh my God. Because if we just have this conversation like you're having, it's just coming off and it's flowing so well, and you're putting ACEs into the conversation. This is what the people are saying out here now. So, what you're telling me based off of telling your story is that you know why your ACEs is making sense to you now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I look back on my upbringing, when I look back on the things that I've learned from a child to now being an adult,
Mhm.
I I used to use the word trauma all the time.
Right.
Everything is trauma, 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 trauma. When I met you and when I talked to you and we've had tons of conversations. I started changing the vernacular to what it should be. And I think sometimes people don't use ACEs because they may say, well, I didn't really have a lot of problems as a kid. My problems came when I became an adult or a teenager, or a late teen, you know, 18 and older. And for me, I say we all have experienced aces, some worse than others. That's why, maybe your score was what it was. But again, it doesn't make you worse or better. It just is what it is. And I believe that for me, my aces played a huge role and still plays a huge role in the way that I live my life, because part of what I said to myself when I was dealing with the issue with not having my dad in my world was, I want to be 180 degrees different as a father than he was in my life. And
Yeah.
so that was part of the thing that I had to work out in my aces when it came to my dad. When it came to my mom, I had to say, how do I deal with some of the issues that we dealt with in the home, because she was a single parent. She didn't get married to my stepdad until 1993. But by that time, I was 24, 25 years old. And before then, I remember just being a kid going through some of the problems that she had in her relationships, with some of the guys that she met. And there was some abuse issues that she experienced and that we end up experiencing from some of these narcissistic guys. One guy in particular was physically abusive, and that's a whole story, but I can give you the Cliff Notes version of it.
I mean, it just, there's nothing for me to say. Like, your story is the story. It's not the story. This is everybody's story. Somebody has something similar. But we don't want to have this talk. We don't want to talk about it. We want to just do this. You are what we call a cycle breaker. because you're breaking generational curses. You said when you've never, I'm kind of mad because you never, we talk all the time. Why you never talk? You really was saving the stuff on the podcast for real, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I told you, I said on my podcast, I said it's my show, but it's the guest interview. It's not about me. I didn't want to do a soliloquy based podcast. No shout out, no disrespect or anything to anybody that does that. And on my podcast, the guest does at least 70% of the talking because again, it's about the guest. I want them to tell their story professionally, personally, all the above, because their story and their share it eclipses what I bring to the table. I have my own conversation that I can have with people. People see me all the time. They may not see you. They may not see the other guests that we've had on the show. However, I want the guests to know that, hey, this is your content that you're bringing to the world. Uncensored conversations. We exchange information. We provide resources. We want to have you say what it is. It is what you say.
And that's why this is LP, y'all. This is the reason why we doing this. In my mind, I swear to God, I had what we were going to do. We were going to go with the old question, because I'm resuming the podcast. And it's been a year. But baby, the way that this just went, it's so endearing. It serves a purpose. You guys, we're not just out here doing this. We're really trying to educate you all for real. And you just prove to the world that I'm doing a pretty good job.
You know what stands out to me about my aces? I think about a few parts of my life. So let me fast forward to me being a father.
Okay.
Me being a father, again, I wanted to be 180 degrees different than my dad was in my life. I'm one of a few men in the state of Missouri that has gotten sole legal and sole physical custody of their children. Not because the mom was a drug addict, not because the mom was an alcoholic, not because she was doing physical abuse to the kids during the time we were married. These things that we dealt with were because I was fighting for my rights. I always said I want to be able to spend the same amount of time with my children as she's able to do. Okay. Period, point blank, with nobody telling me I can't for whatever reason. And we know that Missouri is one of the states where men's rights typically are stifled. We got to take ownership of that, guys, because again, I grew up in a single parent household. It was just me and my mom. For whatever reason that my dad was not around, I always said if I could have 5 minutes with him. And you know how people say if you had X amount of time with whoever that's now no longer here, what's one question you would ask? You know what I would ask my dad? Where did you go? Where did you go when you ghosted? Wow. That's all. I just want to know where he went because it had to be something very important for you to just break camp and never show back up again. Right.
Do you know him? Like, there hasn't been any discussion, nothing at all with him?
Everything that I know about my biological dad, I know from somebody else. Okay. Every single thing that I know about him is from somebody else. That's a shame. And I never want to have any of my kids be able to say the same thing.
You break generational curses. You are doing that. You are breaking generational curses, and you are what we call a cycle breaker. I'm just honored that it makes it it just makes sense. You know what I mean? Finding it out about you. Of course, you knew that you had the childhood traumas and things of that nature because you said that you use trauma. But the fact that you understand it's because of this, and this is the reasons why you did this. You were a cycle breaker and breaking generational curses before you met me. So kudos to you. But to make it make sense, yeah, this is aces. And It's a pandemic. It's out here. Our world needs to know and understand that it's okay to have it. There are things that we need to do in order to better ourselves, and you're doing that. Kudos to you.
I'm a continuous work in progress. That's what I used to have on my IG because I believe I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine, and I said, you know how people say I'm married, so Mrs. LP, as everybody calls her.
Yeah.
I told I told my friend, I said, I never want to be able to tell you or anybody else that I know everything that there is to know about Mrs. LP, and vice versa. And he was like, why do you say that? I said, because that means that I'm not giving her room to grow and expand. I'm stifling her. And likewise, and I hate when I hear people say that I know everything about a person because I don't know everything about me.
Right.
I'm still learning stuff about me.
Mhm.
Old stuff, new stuff, stuff that I've repressed. You
Mhm.
know, there are so many things that we don't tell people about ourselves. So you can't say that you know everything about a person because we all have things that we have never told anybody,
Right.
family, friend, intimate partner, whomever.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that's the reason why people don't want to have the discussion about ACEs?
I believe it's multifaceted. I believe it's that. I believe that the natural fear that people have opening up because sometimes it's so on the podcast that I do, we have a series also, not just the one that we did with you. We have one that's ongoing called Stigmas, Taboos, and Stereotypes. And I
Mhm.
always say, when it comes to the stigmas, taboos, and stereotypes, it's the pain, the judgment, the guilt, the shame, the trauma, all of these things that we have inside of us that keeps us from opening up and seeking the help that we need, especially those that identify as men. You
Right.
know, we tend to have this emotional suppression that we're taught as little boys. I remember I had a number of older male relatives collectively told me there's 5 reasons that a male should that it's okay for a male to cry. You had to be uh, crushed between a couple cars falling off a multi-story building. You had to have lost or won a major sporting event. Somebody had to be dead or dying, or you had just a horrible breakup. And I thought, well, wow, that just puts me in the box. So nothing. I mean, I would get gut punched and called weak or all kind of tropes and all kind of stuff like that. And I've heard other guys have the same conversation when it came to them expressing their emotions. When I look at a friend of mine, he said, think about Tyrese Gibson. I added Michael Jordan, and think about Will Smith. When Tyrese was on his IG live and he was talking about the problems he was having with his daughter,
Mhm.
what happened? They made a crime meme out of it. Same thing happened to Will Smith. This is pre-slap. When he was on the Entanglement Red Table Talk episode, what did they do? Make a crime meme out of him.
Right.
Michael Jeffrey Jordan, on the greatest night of his career when he was being enshrined into the NBA. What happened? They made a crime meme out of him. If they can do that to these rich, wealthy celebrities, what's going to happen to LP? I don't want nobody making a crime meme out of me because I'm showing emotion. Are you kidding me?
Right. Ooh.
Part of it, ACEs, though, because we are taught emotional suppression as children. That's
Right.
part of
And
the
this is
first child
what's
experience.
on with this lesson. I'm definitely going to, oh, this is going to be a good one because you are correct. Emotional support is in ACEs. And maybe that's the reason why people don't want to have that discussion because they don't want to bring up those things. It's suppressed, it's on the inside, and I get it. But just wondering and finding out about it, look how much it can do. Look what, so give me something that you've done and tell Miss LP I said hello as always. What
So
have you done knowing your aces Tell me what
I,
have you done
I'm
different?
going to therapy. Uh,
Yeah.
my yeah, my father-in-law, he had two of the greatest words that I've ever heard a person say when it comes to trauma or ACEs. Seek help. I say it all the time. You know, again, on my podcast, I tell people we don't just do dialogue. We talk about coming up with action plans, and part of
Tell,
those
tell us,
action
tell us about the podcast. I did not do that in the beginning, so tell us about the podcast.
podcast is called Trigger Warning Talk Podcast. All four words. Trigger Warning Talk Podcast, streaming on all platforms. You can watch the interviews, like Dr. Williams' interview, her lovely face, my Missouri sister, with the two master's degrees and the one doctorate. You know, I got to give you a shout out because it's Dr. Torie Williams. It's not an earned doctorate. We're gonna have a conversation about that because I saw something I wanted to show you. But anyway,
Oh,
we have conversations and dialogue and come up with action plans because we cover four areas. We talk about human and sex trafficking, domestic violence, sexually based offenses, true crime, and at the end of every episode, we cover a missing person case. 99% of those are melanated folks, Black and brown folks, because we want to bring the same media attention and energy to those cases that we don't see in mainstream media. So I'm in Charlotte now.
yep.
We covered like the Shanquilla Robinson case.
Mm.
One of our Missouri sisters, her name is Theda Person. We covered her case with her son Christian Ferguson that was covered on court TV. The case is called Missouri versus Ferguson, where her son, who was 9 back in 03, he was living with his dad. He was reportedly to be carjacked. Nobody's ever found his body. And over the last 19 years, she's been fighting for his case to be brought to trial. They brought it to trial. It was on court TV. He was found guilty, and he's in jail now. And so I interviewed her 2 weeks after that case was adjudicated. We have all kind of conversations on the podcast, and we talk about ACEs. We talk about ACEs like nobody's business, and that's thanks to you.
Thank you. Because that means that my purpose is really purpose driven. Thank you so much. I promise you all this is live, a live recording. There's nothing scripted here. This is the first episode, and then it's going to be great because like I said, I like this, but this was definitely needed, and I think it's important for people to understand and know. A year ago, I paused to go into, back into education, and I think this is where I'm really supposed to be.
You're still educated.
And I am, and I think that is what it is. So this solidifies it for me. Yeah, thank you so much. I because, and I will say this, I have you on my page several times. We have actually talked about getting together and having these discussions, and I am going to do that because that is what is needed. Those people that you just talked about are struggling with their adverse childhood experiences. Those experiences have had an impact on them, and here we are. You all, this isn't just me having this conversation. This isn't LP just having this conversation. We've been doing this, you guys. So the podcast has been out there streaming. My podcast, Be VicTORIEus, is streaming just as well on all platforms. So LP, my boy,
Yes.
You know what I'm going to say. Tell Miss LP I said hello.
Always.
Because you're doing a wonderful thing. And I will be there. We have so much stuff in store. We're going to be coming to you. I know for a fact I have to do this episode for because I've been waiting. And so I know that I have to do this. And guess what? I can do this now. So send me the information. We'll get it together and I will do your episode 4.
Absolutely.
I want you to tell me, where do we go again? And tell us the name of your wonderful podcast that addresses ACEs.
You know, this is just so wonderful and such a blessing. I'm honored to not only be able to call you friend, you're a mentor to me. Also, I know you got a slew of people that you mentor. I'm glad to be one of those people. My podcast is called Trigger Warning Talk Podcast. Again, all 4 words. We're streaming on all the major platforms. You can watch the interviews like Dr. Torie's 3-part series on Spotify, as well as our YouTube channel, which is my company's name, Penton Pending Consulting Solutions LLC. You can find me on IG at LP Firemedic, or our company's IG is Penton _pending _CS. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic, which is where the firemedic comes from. I've been in EMS since 2006, got in the fire, and then I retired in 2020 after being on the front line as a COVID medic before we relocated to Charlotte. So if you want to get in touch with me, definitely hit us up on our website, which is pentonpending.com, and look forward to more look forward to more conversations, action plans, networking, and partnership with myself and the wonderful Dr. Torie.
Thank you so much. Because again, with the grace of God, I'm over here in tears. I know you know, because you hid a lot of this. Shame on you, but you make me feel so good about what I'm doing. And I want to go ahead and shout out. I know you see my aces.
I love the earrings. I'm like,
yes,
man.
They are from one of my mentors who is in your same. You know, I do the lives with Sister Fran, so she gave me these as a gift.
Shout out to her.
I'm on social media, Dr. Victorious everywhere, Twitter, Facebook. I'm Be VicTORIEus on TikTok now. I've upgraded. So I'm everywhere, you guys. I would encourage you guys to please go to YouTube, because all of my shows are on there. So please go and subscribe right now to YouTube to Be VicTORIous. You'll see all the previous episodes. I call them my charter team. And then to start off with session 15, it's all that in the bag of chips. I will let you guys know. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you guys very soon. Bye-bye.
LP out.